Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're uncovering the forgotten foundations of an ancient civilization, one that's literally been hiding just beneath the surface. For centuries, the legendary historical chronicles of Sri Lanka have told us one specific story about how society began. But you know the earth beneath those very cities? It tells a completely different, much older tale. Today, we're bringing that hidden narrative into the light. We're going to explore the island's earliest Iron Age inhabitants and decode the cryptic megalithic tombs they left behind. Here's our itinerary for this explainer. We'll quickly move through the megalithic mystery, the pioneers of excavation, ancient Pamparipu, discoveries across the districts, artifacts and rituals, and finally, the dawn of historic settlements. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the megalithic mystery, a century of history. So, here's the crucial point. Long before the grand cities mentioned in the ancient Pali chronicles ever existed, a highly distinct megalithic culture was already thriving on this island. These early communities had it all figured out. They had Iron Age technology, a complex social structure, and some deeply entrenched ritualistic practices. They were, without a doubt, the true original architects of the civilization that would later flourish. Moving right along to Section 2, pioneers of excavation and those crucial early discoveries. Now, the realization that this prehistoric culture even existed, it definitely didn't happen overnight. It actually started way back in 1886 when livers first reported a stone-defined grave at Gurugulhina. Then, skip ahead to the 1920s, and we have A.M. Hockert excavating urns at Pamparipu, but the momentum really shifted in the 1950s. That's when P.E.P. Duranyagala started unearthing these massive limestone-capped urns. And it all culminated in the 1970s with Vimala Begli. Her rigorous surveys finally mapped out the truly massive scale of these forgotten communities. That brings us to Section 3, ancient Pamparipu and its massive urn burials. You really have to appreciate the staggering scale of the Pamparipu cemetery. Archaeologist Vimala Begli's survey proved this was a major center of early human activity. We're talking about 3 to 4 entire acres of land. So this wasn't just some isolated graveyard. It was a monumental site, built and expanded by a thriving population over generations. And it reveals a highly organized society with incredibly complex funerary rituals. Situated right near the Kalaoya River, Pamparipu enjoyed prime maritime access. These inhabitants buried their dead in massive clay urns and carefully sealed them with hefty limestone capstones. But you know what absolutely fascinates archaeologists? It's the striking similarity between this site and the Adichanlore site over in Tamil Nadu, South India. This connection paints a really vivid picture of a vibrant, cross-cultural maritime network that was operating centuries before recorded history. Pretty incredible, right? Let's expand our map in Section 4, across the districts, from Mantai to Kantarodai. So we find those massive urn burials in places like Pamparipu, but travel over to Kokebe and you find cists, these intricate stone-lined graves. Head to Kotaravelli, and they constructed dolmens, which are massive above-ground stone tombs. They even built incredibly precise stone circles just to create protective boundaries around their sacred dead. This kind of architectural diversity is huge. It indicates a highly adaptable, culturally rich society. And the connections keep coming. We see undeniable parallels between the black and red ware found at Kandaradadai and the early Iron Age findings across the sea in South India. These identical, early-stage ceramic styles basically leave no room for doubt. These ancient populations either sprang from common origins, or they maintained deeply entrenched, super active trade networks right across the ocean, way earlier than historians ever previously believed. Okay, Section 5, let's look closer at artifacts and rituals inside the burial urns. When we actually look inside these burials, the diverse artifacts paint such a vivid picture. We're looking at an iron-wielding, agricultural society that clearly valued personal adornment. Over at Pinwewa, they buried spear and knife blades, really showcasing their iron forging mastery. At Pamparipu, they left behind beautiful copper bangles and carnelian beads. Their ceramics featured those sophisticated black and red ware bowls we talked about. But honestly, the most spectacular discovery, the absolute game changer, was the organic traces left behind in the clay itself. Because ultimately, these people were not just nomadic wanderers. They were settled, sophisticated farmers putting down deep roots. Archaeologists actually discovered microscopic casts and carbonized particles of paddy grains permanently embedded right into the coarse clay of the burial urns at Pamparipu. This definitively proves they cultivated rice, and that means they possess the agricultural stability necessary to support massive communities and grand structural projects. Which brings us to a profound historical mystery that demands an answer. For decades, archaeologists kind of treated the megalithic Iron Age and the glorious historical era as two completely separate chapters. But think about it. You simply don't build massive, island-wide agricultural societies without leaving a permanent mark on the future. So we have to ask, how exactly do these two worlds connect? And that leads us to our final section, Section 6, Historic Settlements, the Foundations of Cities. It turns out, those isolated urn burials directly seeded the grand citadels. Extensive excavations have proved a startling fact. The majestic early historic cities of Anuradhapura, Mantai, and Tisimaraharama, they all rest upon a distinct, undeniable megalithic base layer, sitting directly underneath their famous historical ruins. The later kings quite literally built their palaces straight on top of the old Iron Age settlements. So the archaeological record absolutely confirms that the glorious cities of the Palachali Chronicles were built upon the very shoulders of this forgotten Iron Age culture. The whole narrative of a civilization suddenly arriving fully formed, it's a myth. The reality is far more magnificent. The megalithic people, with their advanced iron tools, their maritime trade networks, and their rice cultivation, they established the geographic and cultural anchors that genuinely birthed Sri Lankan civilization. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on long after this explainer wraps up. The journey from mysterious jungle urns to the foundations of majestic citadels reminds us that history is never quite as simple as the stories we're told. The Earth keeps a meticulous record. We just have to be willing to dig for it. Thanks so much for exploring with us, and keep questioning the ground beneath your feet.